First of all, I'd just like to say this is really cool.
Look, can we just talk about something else, please?
Since it's already quiet, I guess we might as well start the team meeting.
Greetings to you wherever you're listening or watching. We're back for episode 6 of the Little Big Fantasy League podcast. In last week's episode, we looked at our fantasy league's matchups and standings, discussed some early season surprises, and debated the fan interference rule. And the debates continued through the second half of the episode as Joe shared some of his red hot and controversial takes, and things got pretty heated. So this week, we'll kind of begin with another look at our last week's matchups and standings, and we'll share some details on a Blockbuster trade that went down this past week. And after gaining some attention of King Arthur's rival, Sir Mordred, last week, the Knights of the Roundtable gather once again to discuss some more MLB drama, and be sure to stay tuned for another segment of Leo's Trivial Pursuit, sponsored by Baggage. It's too bad Joe and Carter could not make it today to be live for this episode, but our hats go off to them, and hopefully they'll be back next week. So why don't we jump into this week's matchups, Leo?
All right, yeah, let's do it here. So week 3, at this point, you cannot be a 500 team in this league. So yeah, let's take a look at the updated matchups. The high scorer from last week, shocking the league, was Ristopia himself, Carter, putting up a huge 839.7 against Kyle, who had a pretty good week. I was the second place finisher going against Justice, and the third place finisher was Walt, scraping by a close win in a matchup with bye week playing against the Detroit Mariners. Also getting wins, his first win in this league history would be Tom, the barrel-aged rye guys. I know he was pretty excited about that, getting to chat with him a little bit yesterday about that matchup, and just the feeling of getting the monkey off his back and getting that first win. And then JD with another solid win, moving to 3-0 against Kerry Bonds. I'm sure, JD, that was a pretty good feeling, being Joe, who's got a solid team.
Yeah, no, he got off to a strong start there, and then I kind of gained a lead for most of the rest of the week, and then he kind of came back, and the last few days were stressful there for sure. But I think just kind of down the stretch, I know he had one really bad but Brian Walker had blew a save, and that didn't help him at the end there on Sunday night. So, but he had some pretty good consistent production offensively with Torque going off, and for me it was again Cal Raleigh, Soderstrom, and Bregman had a good week, and good old Merrill Kelly. But yeah, so yeah, it was a close match, and at the end I pulled it out. So
yeah, solid. Yeah, I know Carter's pretty pumped up about not only getting another win, but being the high scorer in the league. I don't think anybody expected that, honestly. I don't think he expected it himself, but I think he's made some really nice moves to put himself in a nice position to be able to be a little bit more competitive this year. I mean, he still had a solid team last year overall, just missed the playoffs, but I think he was a little bit down coming into the season. But big shout out to Carter for kind of turning things around and riding the ship in a different course. So, I mean, that's 839. That's a really solid week for Carter.
yeah, it seemed like his offense really carried him. Everyone except for Tristan Casas had a really good week for the most part. He's pretty consistent. Matt Chapman went off pretty well too, and so hats off to Carter definitely this week. And other matchups, John and Walt, that was a pretty close matchup as well. Walt's been killing it with Pete Alonso, Tatis, and Corbin Carroll. Yamamoto really dealt this week. John fell short, unfortunately, but he had some good moments with Bryce Miller and Brent Rooker, and Double starts from Skubal. Mason Miller looks sharp as well. Clase got him some points too, but he just kind of, even though he blew one save, so still some ups and downs there. But yeah, Walt's looking good as well. We'll look at the standings there too, how that plays out. But anyone else we didn't talk about?
I think we touched on all of them. There's definitely some standouts for sure, but let's look at the week 3 standings. Two teams are left undefeated with bye week, over 2,900 points in first place in the standings at 3-0, and of course the Stephen Hawkings of JD also 3-0 with just over 2,400 points there. And then the 2-1 teams, we got the Luke Collins Heartthrobbers, Kerry Bonds, solid so far. Bristopia, we talked about a huge win. And then the bottom of the league, 6 through 10, the Detroit Mariners, Schwellenbach Enthusiast, Barrel Aged Rye Guys, Otani's Interpreters, and the Justice League. Now, of those bottom teams there, 6 through 10, JD, which team would scare you the most in a matchup if you had to play them right now based on the current rosters?
That's a really good question. I'd definitely say the Detroit Mariners, for sure for me. I know John has just a really good pitching staff overall and some really good hitters. So, on the right week, you can definitely put up a lot of points. And I think it just seems like there were a couple weeks there that, sometimes it just, the other team just has a better week. It just happens, and I think I've gotten lucky so far in my first 3 games. So I'm actually a little scared of Tom this week. He's projected to have more points. So we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, I'd probably go with John's team first out of those 4.
Interesting that you talk about the projections too. I was at Comerica Park with Tom last night to catch the first game of the series between the Tigers and Padres, of course, with the Tigers coming out on top. We're filming this episode on Tuesday, April 22nd, as we typically film on Monday. But we were talking about those projections and how those can change depending on whether you set your lineups for the entire week, and even like your pitchers that are probable for those matchups on any given day. If you have them sitting on your bench, they don't necessarily factor into those projections. And so Yahoo has a nice feature where you can like auto set your lineup for the week, but like still, I think to get every guy in that you want to, especially hitters when you're playing the different matchups, like you still have to make those manual adjustments. But I feel like there's sometimes where those projections can be a little bit inaccurate depending on if a team actually is putting all of their starting pitchers in. So I usually try to like use that with caution.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I try to go in with confidence. Sometimes I'll like go through to feel better about my team going into the week, and I'll throw all my pitchers in. But there's other weeks where I'm like, I don't really have the time to do this. Like I better just like check it every day kind of thing. So
Yeah,
it's definitely interesting that you bring that up.
that's a good point. I should maybe start everybody and readjust my thoughts for this week. I don't know. See how it goes, but good point.
Yeah, and it's hard too because like I know for me, I've gotten a little bit trigger happy with some of the ads so far, like trying to beat certain opponents. Like for
Yep.
me, going into this week, I picked up Walker Bueller for his start on Monday because I knew that he's been pitching well of late. He was going against the White Sox. It just seemed like the perfect guy to grab to have the double start this week. And Joe is a tough team. I really want to beat Joe, quite honestly. So yeah, there's always that strategy component, but I have to agree with you. I think John, of those bottom teams right now at 1 and 2, is the biggest threat. I mean, most obvious as well because of how many points he's put up.
Mhm.
He would definitely be within the top 4 or 5. It looks like just based on his points alone, but that's not how this league works. You got to win those weekly matchups.
That's right. Gotta get the dub. Cool.
Credit to Justice as well. I know he's been making some moves. He's had some bad IL luck at this point, and I think he's going to start kind of turning things around and being a little bit more competitive. So, one of the goals of this league has been to really create that competitive balance, and I think, there's definitely a few teams at this point where you go into the weekly matchup with a ton of confidence. You're not too worried about things, but the more that the team owners check their lineups and make moves and throw guys on the IL when they go on the IL, the more competitive this league is going to be. And I know that just like the general interest is a little bit greater this year overall, I would say. So the league is in a good spot.
Yeah, totally agree. As much as it would be nice to have those kind of easy dubs sometimes, I think it is better if it's more competitive. So
100%. All right. So JD, you mentioned it in the intro there, but let's get into our next topic, the third trade in Little Big
yeah.
Fantasy League history. The barrel-aged rye guys receiving Yohan Duran, and bye week receiving a player that's been talked about a lot on this podcast, Jake Berger.
Oh,
Got the official Jake Berger home run tracker going. I believe he is still at 2 at this point.
yeah, still.
And yeah, so thoughts on that trade right from the get-go, JD?
Yeah, I think if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, I think Walt had Jake Berger last year at certain points throughout the year. I can't remember if I'm pretty sure that's correct. So he definitely seems to be a Jake Berger fan. Maybe wants in on some of Carter's bold prediction there, and bought low a little bit. But I also I'd just say hats off to Tom for picking up the Burgermeister off the scrap heap in the off season and then kind of selling him for Duran, who's, he's only 24 years old. The Twins aren't very good, but he still has good stuff. So that's a guy that you could kind of lock him in there for the foreseeable future. I think those small moves can pay off in the long run too. If you can just slightly improve your team, like here and there. So yeah, would love more of an inside scoop from the guys. We got a little bit of a statement from Tom over text. So, um, but yeah, that's kind of my first thoughts on the trade.
Yeah, JD, you reached out in the league chat asking for both parties to comment. A direct quote from Tom here: barrel-aged boys are open for business, need to inject life into this corpse of a team. Which, to be fair, he started off with a pretty rough roster going into
Yeah.
the season. And, being the first, manager to take over an existing team is a tall task for anybody. But I think this move definitely favors Tom. I really like the fact that he's trying to bolster his bullpen. I think Jake Berger does have that positional flexibility. I think he can play first and third, if I'm not mistaken. So it is nice to have that positional flexibility for Walt. Another interesting tidbit here, I can't speak to if Jake Berger was on Walt's team last year, but I know that he ended the season on John's team, the Detroit Mariners, because as he was selecting his keepers, he was between Eugenio Suarez and Jake Berger. And he threw out a message to a few guys in the league, and everybody seemed to agree that he should keep Suarez. And Suarez has had he's done okay this season. He's had a couple big moments where he's hit multiple grand slams. But, to start the season here, Jake Berger has definitely struggled. I don't know if Duran's really getting as many opportunities to close down games as he would like at this point, but looking at his stats so far, he's pitched in 10 games, 9 1/3, 9 strikeouts. And the
Had like
save
one bad start points wise, but otherwise he's been positive technically. But yeah,
a 1 save total this year. He had 23 last year, 27 the season before. I don't know if the Twins are using like multiple guys to close down games, but the Twins are kind of struggling too. So
yeah,
I think the clear-cut winner here is Tom. I got to pick his brain a little bit about the trade yesterday, and he pretty much told me that he was just looking to make a move that kind of benefited his bullpen in that way. And yeah, I can't speak to any of the details on like
mm-hmm.
who was pursuing this
Behind the
trade.
scenes, yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea. But I know Walt is always active on at least considering moves like this, which I think is definitely a good thing. I mean, it's I like to see a little bit of player movement.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, pretty interesting. We'll definitely keep tabs on that one. I think, with just only having 3 trades in league history, it's fun to keep track of, what ends up paying off. Looking back to last season, we talked about this a bit on one of the earlier episodes, but Walt fleeced Cade, acquiring Corbin Carroll, and then the trade earlier this year with JT Real Muto and Wyatt Langford going to Riztopia for Adley Rutschman going to John. I mean, that one's been pretty interesting too. So just fun to keep track of that movement.
Yeah. Keep it up, guys.
I know I've definitely had trade talks with several teams, and nothing has really come to fruition where I felt like it was worth making a move. But I think there's definitely going to be a few more trades before the deadline this year. I think teams are going to be antsy to acquire players depending on how this season goes.
Yeah, I'd like to see something shake up for sure. I think I'm just more hesitant with trades, but once you get me talking, maybe I don't know. So
yeah, the reason I'm hesitant, I think too, is just because like I worry about like if I make like a wrong move that I'm just gonna absolutely regret it. I was in trade talks with Joe. At one point, we were considering a 1-for-1 swap between Freddie Peralta and Hunter Brown. And if you looked like a week or two ago, they were like neck and neck in points. Like, but Brown has just like a slight edge.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I didn't make that move in hindsight. And Brown is younger too, which is one of the reasons I was hesitant to make that move. But there's just so much to consider when you're trying to make a trade and you don't want to end up on the bad end of a deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I would have accepted that either. That's a close one.
And we were going to throw in like a 2-for-2. He was going to throw in Jeremy Pena. I was going to throw in Bryson Stott. At that point in the year, Pena was hitting a little bit higher in the Astros lineup. They had Stott hitting 8th. And now I think Pena is still hitting somewhere around the 6th slot, but they're using Stott in the leadoff spot instead of Schwarber against at least right-handed pitchers right now, which is kind of nice. So, I mean, so early to evaluate, but I probably would have lost that trade in the short term.
Yeah, maybe. Hard to tell.
Yep. All right. Well, let's get into the next segment here. It made its debut back in late March on episode 2. The Little Big Fantasy League podcast team was challenged with 2 trivia questions. And for some, it was as easy as ripping open a 2025 Topps Easter tin. And for others, it was as difficult as trying to break open a graded PSA 5 card out of its plastic encasement. Today, the Little Big Leaguers are challenged once again with 2 more trivia questions in another segment of Leo's Trivial Pursuit, sponsored by our own favorite show, Baggage. So, let's first look at the trivia batting averages here. So going down the line in alphabetical order, this is as of 4/21/2025. Carter is hitting 0 in 2 at-bats. 2 trivia questions, and he struck out on both. JD hitting a clean 500, so 1 for 2. Joe, surprisingly, hitting 0, 2 at-bats, and 2 strikeouts. And then John, who made a special appearance, the league commissioner, was the only team member to get both questions right the first time around. So he's batting a clean 1,000. So we'll look to continue to update this leaderboard as we give more questions and get more answers. Obviously, we don't have everybody on the podcast tonight, but we do have answers from both Joe and Carter at this point. Joe will be sharing his in a recorded video format, and Carter's he gave me via a text message. So, shall we get into question 1?
Do it.
Okay. So, the Orioles obviously had a tough game pretty recently against the Reds. I think it was it 24-2 final?
Mm-hmm.
So, my question is, the last time that the Orioles gave up more than 24 runs, it was the Orioles against the Rangers back on August 22nd, 2007. Can you name 2 players from the starting lineups? So you can choose 1 Oriole, 1 Ranger. You can choose 2 Orioles. You can choose 2 Rangers. I just need 2 players from those starting lineups. You can also give the starting pitcher if you'd like. So you have pickings between 20 different players. And I'm going to throw 30 seconds on the clock here with the time starting right now. So looking for who was in those starting lineups in 2007 for the Rangers and Orioles. I only need a total of 2 players.
I feel like the first thing I can think of is Mark Teixeira. I think he was on the Rangers. Maybe not. I don't know. And then around the same time, I don't know, was Miguel Tejada on the Orioles at the time?
All right, I can say that your 30
All I can
seconds
think of.
has passed. So, are you locking in Mark
Yeah, it's the only
Teixeira
two I
and
can
Miguel
think of right
Tejada?
now. Yeah. Or Josh Hamilton, maybe. I guess he'd probably be around that time, too.
All right, so to count up the guesses here, we've got Mark Teixeira and we've got Miguel Tejada from JD. Looking back to the text message from Carter earlier today, his 2 guesses, of course, both Orioles, Brian Roberts and Nick Markakis. And we will take a brief pause here as we get Joe's responses via video. Take a look.
Well, obviously, since you guys know I wasn't able to be on the podcast tonight, but Leo so graciously let me in on the trivia questions. So, taking a look at the first one, I'm going to say 2 players that were on those teams. I'm going to guess 1 Oriole, 1 Ranger. The first Oriole, I'm going to go with Melvin Mora. And the Ranger, I'm going to go with Michael Young, Ranger great.
All right, so we have all of the answers now. And I can say, we'll start with JD here. You got 1 out of the 2. Miguel Tejada was a correct pick, but Mark Teixeira was not on the starting lineup for the Rangers that day. I don't know if he was on the team at that point. I feel like, let's see.
Was he on the Yankees at that point?
Could have been with the Angels. I know that he had a year with the Angels. Let's take a look at what team
Hamilton
Teixeira was on in 07.
That's 07. Yeah.
Atlanta. And then he came to, actually, he was on the Rangers to start the season and would have been dealt to Atlanta for the second half. So you definitely were thinking right.
So I was in the ballpark. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Dang.
So, yeah, Carter's answers here of, let's see, Brian Roberts and Nick Markakis. That is going to be correct. Nick Markakis hit 3rd. Brian Roberts hit 1st. And Joe's answers here, trying to remember who he picked. I might have to just tally that up afterwards. Joe did get his answer correct, remembering off the top of my head. So well done to Joe and Carter there on question 1. And just an almost there for JD.
Was Josh Hamilton one of them? that would have counted?
He was not one of them.
He's not one of them. Shoot.
And nobody guessed the man that was featured in last week's advertisement, Jared Salsalovakia, who hit 8th for the Rangers that day. A couple other good names, Ian Kinsler, Nelson Cruz, David Murphy. So,
yeah,
some good names.
Good names. Good old Ian Kinsler.
Yep. All right, question 2. Which MLB team combined for the last no-hitter, which took place on September 4th, 2024, another 30 seconds starting now? Which MLB team combined for the last no-hitter, which took place on September 4th, 2024? Max Fried had a little bit of a no-hit bid the other day. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the podcast. This was not only the last combined effort, but this was the last no-hitter that has taken place in the MLB. That is 30 seconds, so we will go to Carter's guess first here. Carter went with the Philadelphia Phillies, and now we will also take another brief pause and throw it over to Joe for his answer.
For the second trivia question, the last combined no-hitter 2024, I believe, and I could be wrong here, I believe it was the Houston Astros that threw a combined no-hitter last year. Not 100% sure, but I'm going to lock in Houston Astros.
All right. So, Joe went with the Houston Astros for his guess. So we got 2 guesses in, and we now go to JD.
I guess the Tigers.
All right, all the guesses are in. The correct answer is the Chicago Cubs. They had a combined no-hitter with Shota Imanaga leading the way, Nate Pearson and Porter Hodge combining for that amongst those 3 players, which was the first no-hitter thrown by the Cubs at Wrigley Field in 52 years. Pretty impressive. And I don't think I would have gotten that one correct myself. So here is a look at the updated trivia batting averages after this last set of questions here. Nobody at this moment is perfect anymore.
Perfect.
So we'll look forward to another trivia segment, hopefully coming up in a few weeks here.
Yeah, gotta improve that average. Do I get a half a point for getting one of the names right in the first question?
It's all or nothing. I was thinking about, maybe counting that as 2 at bats, but you had 20 players to choose between, so it had to be a single at bat there for you.
Alrighty.
Give you a gold star though, maybe or maybe a red star.
Yeah, maybe a red star.
All right, I think with that, we're going to go ahead and take our first break and hear from our sponsor, Baggage.
To find your prince, you've got to kiss a lot of frogs.
That is pretty disgusting.
On Baggage, we uncover the warts for you.
I have over 2,000 comic books. I think environmentalism is stupid.
Mr. Perfect.
I dump girlfriends if they gain weight.
Now couples can skip to happily ever after.
I can accept your baggage.
Baggage, next Friday starting at 8/7 Central, only on GSN.
Thank you to our sponsor, Baggage. Thank you to Jerry Springer. Before we get into our final segment, Joe is at tonight's Tigers game, so let's hear a word from the team owner of Kerry Bonds.
Well, gentlemen, I'm here at Comerica Park, getting ready to watch the Detroit Tigers put a beat down on the San Diego Padres. The Motor City Kitties are taking this one home. Gotta love a little Elton John in the background. Signing off, gentlemen.
Thank you for that, Joe. Tigers currently down 2-0 with Nick Pivetta dealing against Jack Flaherty and hoping the Tigers can turn it around here.
Not too much, because Pavetta's on my team, so maybe after he's out of the game, he can make a comeback or something.
No, let's turn it around right now. All right, gents, I think it is that time. Do you hear the sound of the trumpet? Because I sure do. King Arthur's longtime rival, Wow. I couldn't even say it. King Arthur's longtime rival, Sir Mordred, caught word of our roundtable from episode 5. And even though we're down 2 nights tonight with Carter and Joe on separate side quests, King Arthur, aka JD, has called us back together to discuss this week's MLB drama. So we gather yet again.
Welcome back.
Right in. Thank you, King Arthur. I'm honored to sit around your.
I need to get a crown I can wear and a sword.
You need the Hawking's crown.
Yeah.
All right, so first item open for discussion around tonight's roundtable. A Braves double standard? Can I get a yikes?
Yikes.
Yikes.
So, Saturday night game this past week, Jared Kelenic of the Braves, who was mentioned in last week's episode, because we talked about how Alex Verdugo was going to come up and be the Braves' savior. Anyway, I had hope in Jared Kelenic, and he smashes a ball to right field, thinks it's gone off the bat, and instead of running full speed, he takes a nice long look at it, he admires it, and dogs it down the line. When he realizes the ball hits the wall, then he tries to make it to second, and let's just say that didn't work out too well for him. So initially, Kelenic is ruled safe at second, but upon video review, the call on the field is overturned, and he is ruled out. So, why does this matter? Well, Braves manager Brian Snitker does not bench Jared Kelenic, and comments after the game saying that he didn't realize at the time that Kelenic's lack of hustle resulted in the ultimate out. And now we go back all the way to 2019, where Ronald Acuna Jr., the best player on the Braves, I would say, pretty much in an identical situation. And the response was a little bit different for Ronald, being held to a higher standard perhaps by Brian Snitker, as Acuna was benched. So, initial thoughts right off the bat on the Kelenic play. And is there a double standard in this case, JD?
Yeah, I mean, I think in hindsight, yeah, there kind of is. I mean, Snitker at least missed it. Like he said, he didn't see it. So he must have been wrapped up in something else. And he obviously didn't miss Acuna's. And I know also this apparently happened to Ozuna at one point as well, where he got benched after kind of watching a ball. You know, he pimped it or watched it and didn't hustle it. I think the worst part about this is the way that Acuna handled it. And I don't know, do you want to get into that now, or do you want to?
Yeah, let's do it.
Into that now. Yeah, I mean, tweeting about it is not the best move. It's kind of weird. That's something that you should probably handle internally, having a conversation with Snitker about. So that's not a good look. I think it's also, I don't know how much this plays into it, but just the fact that Jared Kelenic and Acuna are very different players at both of these times when it happened. You know, Acuna was having a pretty big year at the time in 2019. He was 22 years old. Kelenic is kind of just, you know, an outfielder. You know, he's had some good moments here and there, but nothing close to what Acuna was when he was 22. But I guess the standard is the standard, right? So you're supposed to hold to the standard. Obviously, he missed it. And I feel like if you wanted to light a fire under this Braves team, then you could have made a statement with something. to hustle out plays because they're not playing well. So it's like, I feel like that's a missed opportunity for them because sometimes that can do something for you. But I don't know. I think at least Snitker missed this, and he was open to admitting that. But then Acuna didn't handle it well by tweeting it out.
Yeah, the tweet, which you can see up on the screen right now, was taken down by Acuna pretty shortly after it was posted. He said, "If it were me, they would take me out of the game." That was sent out the following day on Sunday, as a play occurred on Saturday for Kalanick. But yeah, I think it's somewhat of a double standard. Maybe an oversight by Snitker, Braves manager, but at the end of the day, it's just not a good look for Kalanick overall. Lack of hustle leading to that out. And with the Braves struggling, as you mentioned too, it's just totally inexcusable at this point. We're so early in the season too, but I think the Braves are definitely struggling a little bit more than they'd like. They're 9-13, fourth in the NL East. The Marlins are playing better than them, you could argue, based on their record. But yeah, not a good look at all for the Braves here for Acuna. I agree with you, JD. Just not really the proper way to handle that situation. Being a team leader, Acuna, I don't know if he's been with the team. I assume that he probably has been with them at home. Obviously, he's been out injured for the Braves, so probably not traveling with them.
I think he's rehabbing right now in the minors. Yeah.
Okay. But he's probably close to a return, and I mean, you're trying to kind of get this clubhouse back on track, and I feel like that's just toxic at this point to throw something out like that. So it's a big yikes for Kalanick and a big yikes for Acuna at the end of the day, and honestly for Snitker too. I just don't think that he really handled it properly. I caught a little bit of his post-game interview, but to say he completely missed that, especially with all the video replays and how many coaches are in the dugout these days, there's no way that could have been a complete oversight, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, someone would have at least talked to him about it. Yeah. And he could have still addressed it even if he wasn't watching the play, but I don't know. Yeah, it's a weird one.
Yep. So that's our first piece of MLB drama from this past week. Our second piece of MLB drama came on Easter Sunday with Wyatt Langford trying to steal second base in the ninth inning. We'll take a look at that. You can see it on your screen if you're watching on YouTube right now, but Jake Berger, who just seems to be the most popular guy in town for this podcast, is at bat for the Rangers with 2 outs against the Dodgers in the ninth inning. Wyatt Langford is on first, and he takes off for second. Will Smith makes a nice throw down to Miguel Rojas at second base. Langford is called out, and after video review, the call on the field actually stands, so the game ends 1-0 with the Dodgers getting the win. Now, the umpire in this case, JD, said that Langford's foot came off the base, which to me it looks like maybe the tip of the cleat did, but this one I think could have gone either way. It's kind of difficult to tell, at least based on this video replay, if Rojas still had the tag applied when Langford's literally the tips of his cleat came off the base.
Yeah. No, I'm honestly, when I went back and looked at it, it seemed like he was safe, even though the call was out on the field. It's weird, his foot was on the bag when the glove was on the bag, when the glove was on him, and then when he came off of it, it was the glove was between his legs, and then he came back on, and then I feel like he came back on right before he tagged him again. And even listening to both broadcasts, even the Dodgers broadcast agreed, yeah, he definitely looked safe. And then they were super surprised that they got the call. So yeah, I mean, I feel like it's just, I don't know. It seems like a missed call to me. I mean, even if he's called safe, you have Jake Berger at the dish with 2 outs in the ninth. So it's not end of game, but it's still gotta be frustrating for Rangers fans.
Yeah, and a struggling Jake Berger at that. As we mentioned, the Jake Berger home run tracker sitting at 2 at the moment, sitting below 200 as it stands right now. So Rangers kind of just trying to make something happen in the ninth. A really awkward
Taking
looking
the bat
play.
out of Jake Berger's hands. He could have hit a 2-run walk-off.
Could have added to that home run counter for the sake of Carter and now Walt after acquiring him via trade.
Yeah.
So, yeah, awkward looking play. I think it's one of those ones too where, you know, even the MLB replay system isn't necessarily going to be perfect, but it shows you how important that initial call is, because to me it says there's not enough conclusive evidence to overturn that.
Yeah, it's frustrating regardless, but yeah, I agree with that.
So yeah, a big yikes on that steal attempt.
Double yikes.
A failed steal attempt. You know, Rangers have done really well this year. They're leading in the American League West and just trying to manufacture something against the best, at least the best roster in the game at this point with the Dodgers.
What's
All
next?
right. So yeah, a double yikes for Langford, but how about a triple yikes for Max
yikes.
Fried and the Yankees? Now, all credit to Max Fried. He had a fantastic outing. The Yankees end up winning this game, but also looking at Easter Sunday on the 20th, Max Fried and the Yankees going against Tampa Bay. And we are at good old George Steinbrenner Field in Tampa, Florida, or wherever Florida it is. I don't even know if it is Tampa, and I've been there. So we're in the 6th inning. Chandler Simpson of the Rays, who's the speedster without a doubt, hits a grounder to the right side. The ball deflects off of future Hall of Famer Paul Goldschmidt's glove, and Simpson reaches base safely. Now, the play is initially ruled an error, and Max Fried ends up cruising through some batters in the following innings, and flash forward to before the start of the 8th inning, and he's got himself a no-hitter going, which is a big deal. Like, everyone who has the MLB app gets the notification. Max Fried with a no-hit bid is heading into the 8th. Like that's a huge deal for baseball to have a no-hitter on watch. I mean, you get viewership goes up, the pressure's on, it's always a chance at history. So we're in between innings, and the official scorekeeper of this game, a man by the name of Bill Matthews, changes the ruling to a hit, stating that Simpson would have been safe even if the ball was handled cleanly. Here's a direct quote from Michael Kay, Yankees play-by-play TV broadcaster, after learning of the change from a error to a hit. He said, "I am absolutely flabbergasted, ladies and gentlemen. The official scorer here at Steinbrenner Field, a man by the name of Bill Matthews, has changed the Simpson E3 into a hit while the Yankees were in the dugout. Just unfathomable. Either you call it when it happens, you don't wait 3 innings to go by." Thoughts on this play before we get into some post-game thoughts from Aaron Boone, Yankees manager?
Yeah, I mean, my first knee-jerk reaction was just because he was complaining, and they were up 3-0, and they're gonna probably win the game. But then I kind of put myself in his shoes, like imagine if this happened to Skubal, and he's throwing a no-hitter, and then that gets overturned, that call gets changed, that'd be disappointing. Yeah, I guess it's just one of those weird rulings. It's close, it's Simpson so fast, and and at the end of the day, the Rays got a hit in the 8th inning, the inning that they changed it anyway. So I don't know how significant it is. It's just one of those weird things that just happens, and then you're just trying to figure out what would have happened, if it would have stayed that way. Did they keep Fried in? How does that change his approach? And it's just a regular season game, but it's on Easter Sunday again, and it's a no-hitter. So that would be a disappointing way to lose a no-hitter for sure.
Yeah.
And Yeah, but I don't know. It's one of those. It's kind of a weird ruling, weird moment.
Yeah, a good point you brought up too on like, do you keep him in the game knowing at that point that he doesn't have a no-hitter, had that call been reversed a little bit sooner, or had that call been really made correctly originally? And some Boone post-game thoughts. It sounds like he wouldn't have taken him out of the game regardless, but a direct quote here from Aaron Boone: "We're not going to beat him to the bag. I get it, but it makes it a little bit dicey when it's within the game, obviously with the no-hitter going on." And he also quoted, "The reality is it was a hit." And I have to agree with Boone. 100% that's a hit. With Simpson's speed, there's no chance that they make that play with Fried trying to cover the bag. With, even if Goldschmidt picks that cleanly, there's no way he makes it there himself.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just one of those ones where, probably should have been ruled a hit initially. To me, like, I don't understand how that was ruled an error, quite honestly. Like, that's on the scorekeeper at that point. I don't know if they have like backups or anything like that. And yeah, I mean, it is what it is at that point. Thankfully, it didn't like really affect the outcome of the no-hitter. I mean, you can't really compare it to like the Armando Galarraga like missed call necessarily, but like you see how big of a deal like a call can make from an umpire. This is definitely like the first time that I've ever seen where like a call from the official scorekeeper has potentially like altered history. But at the end of the day, it's the play that like can alter history, not like the actual ruling. But it is somewhat subjective what a hit or an error is. So
yeah, a little gray area there.
Yeah, not a perfect game, no pun intended.
Yeah.
All right, so same game. This will be our last official topic of the roundtable this evening. There will be some honorable mentions as well, but Easter Sunday once again. Gonna get a quadruple yikes.
Quadruple yikes!
Aaron Judge with a home run that was called a foul ball. So, what happened here? Aaron Judge sends a towering drive into left field, which to me pretty clearly disappears into the trees just to the right of the foul pole, making it a fair ball. However, this was ruled a foul ball, and there wasn't really anything that they could do about it. This didn't really go to video review, and Judge ends up striking out. Aaron Boone gets fired up. He gets ejected from the game. And there were some definitely interesting post-game thoughts from both Aaron Judge and Aaron Boone. But first, JD, what did you see here in this video?
Yeah, I mean, at first it's hard to tell, just from the camera angle, just right away. But then as they kind of show you the shot with like trees, it gets pretty obvious. I feel like it's hard to tell at first just because of the foul ball so short, and we kind of go back to the limitations of these minor league parks that we talked about last week with the camera angles, with the Zach Hampel play, and his when he robbed the catch. So yeah, it seems like they missed another call here, and again, kind of the limit playing in the minor league parks. I mean, I can't remember. I mean, how often do they review like foul ball, home run? If it's not or if it is, like, do they do that? I can't even remember like how often they do that.
I think they can, is my understanding. Like if the umpires come together, they can review the play, but I don't think it's like challengeable. Like the managers can't challenge in that case. It would have to be the umpires convene. Now that the managers could have some sway, like I don't know if Boone went out there and argued for that necessarily. I don't know if he went out right after the foul ball. I know he got ejected ultimately, but that's something where maybe Aaron could have gone out and asked for the managers to come together to at least, take a look at the play and maybe review it.
Yeah, it's hard. It's again like if you're in a major league park, it's probably more noticeable to see if that's a home run or not. And so it's just, yeah. And then even think about the longer term, think about this, like think about Aaron Judge home run counter, you know, like does that count against him down, you know, at the end of the season? You know, maybe he's trying to, maybe misses a record or something by one. Like that's kind of crazy.
It'll definitely be talked about if it comes down to that. I can tell you what, I missed out on some fantasy points as a result of that. Turning into a nice,
you
juicy
definitely
strikeout.
wouldn't have won the week without that home run.
I just want the top ranked player in the league. Come on. But let's look at Aaron Judge's post game thoughts here. He quoted, "Yeah, it was a fair ball, but that's why we have replay. That's why you have replay. You have every angle. Yeah, it's a fair ball." He said, "Yeah, I think everyone is kind of scratching their head. Nothing I can do about it. They missed it, and we just got to move on." And he also talks about the foul poles being a little bit shorter than standard MLB foul poles. And to me, like, Steinbrenner Field is a fantastic venue to watch a game. Like, I've been there myself, saw the Dodgers and Yankees in spring training back a few years ago. Like, it's a great space to watch a ball game. And in many ways, it is up to MLB standards. I don't think they'd be using it as a field this year if it weren't. But yeah, you have limited camera angles like we've chatted about, and you've got shorter foul poles. So, I mean, look, how much can it be to go and grab a couple of taller foul poles? Like, there needs to be some kind of I think there needs to be something done here. Change out the foul poles. So what if it's a couple $100,000? Like that's chump change for the Rays to spend, or for the Yankees to spend. Kind of ironic in this situation too that we're looking at a Yankees spring training minor league facility that the Rays are housed in this year, and these two teams are in this current conversation for this particular game. But go out and get yourself some taller foul poles. Like, do something about it. This should have gone to video review. And Aaron Boone post-game quote, he said, "The audacity of the call standing is remarkable. It's a home run. It didn't go our way, though." That about sums it up.
Pretty much. I mean, it's on the Rays too, probably, to spend that money, I would have to guess. And they're a pretty cheap organization, so even so, yeah.
GoFundMe. Started GoFundMe. Larger foul poles. Yeah. I mean, it worked in the Rays' favor, so they're not going to go out.
Yeah, good
point.
Foul
poles. It would be the Yankees.
They don't have Aaron Judge hitting home runs that high. They don't got to worry about that.
All right, we'll throw a few honorable mentions in here as well for just some MLB drama from the past week here. The Cubs against the Diamondbacks on Friday, a blustery day in Wrigleyville. The Cubs were leading 7-1. DBacks put up 10 in the 8th, including a Eugenio Suarez slam. And the Cubs respond with 6 runs in the 8th, including a Carson Kelly home run, his second of the day. The Cubbies come out on top 13-11. I'm sure you saw some highlights from that game, JD. That is the announcers were saying after the game that it's one of the craziest games they've ever seen.
Yeah, definitely game of the season so far. A lot of fun. Just even watching the highlights. You know, Carson Kelly has been going off early on this season, so hats off to him. And of course, King Tuck also still going strong here. He had a triple and a homer in this game, I believe. Corbin Carroll still going off. Colin Rea actually looked good in this game too. It was like low scoring to start for the Cubs, and then it just kind of took off in the late innings here. But yeah, really fun game.
Definitely. Another moment, Andrew McCutchen hit by a pitch against the Nationals sparked the benches to clear. A couple of ejections as well. McCutchen ended up throwing a post out on X a little bit later, saying that he was not thrown at intentionally, which I thought was interesting. John Boy was trying to stir something up on X, saying that he was thrown at intentionally and he knew it was coming, but McCutchen kind of claimed that that was not the case.
Yeah, I watched his breakdown on it, and he showed a few like previous at bats where him and Reynolds both hit bombs off of him, and so I think that he was trying to like use that, and then also some history from Lopez with other hitters too. But yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of one of those. Hopefully not on purpose, but he still got ejected and suspended. Correct? Did he get suspended?
I have to look that up. Yeah, you know what? He definitely got suspended.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, and then also for the Pirates, Emmanuel Valdez gets called out at third base, asking for time.
Oh, yeah.
I saw a few angles of that. It was unclear to me in the little video that I watched on it, like if he truly was calling for time, like, and that was the reason why he ultimately ended up being out. Like, I didn't look into it enough for it to matter, because I was like, it's the Pirates. They were already down in the game. This is just not worth my time, quite honestly. Pirates are sad.
Don't blame me there.
Man.
Pretty rough. We should have a whole segment on the timeline of just terrible things that they've been doing so far this season.
It's a sad
from
team.
The management, it's really sad. Yeah.
8-15, bottom of the Central. You got the best pitcher in the game, best young pitcher in the game.
Yeah. It's rough.
That's a yikes.
Big yikes.
Yikes.
And then our last honorable mention. There's plenty more drama-filled moments from this past week, but we can't name them all. But the Luis Arias play at first was pretty crazy. He was carted off the field. We're just glad that Luis is okay. He ended up going to the hospital that night. It looked like he got knocked out on that collision at first base, but yeah, just thankful that he's okay. He was placed on the 7-day concussion IL earlier today, so doesn't get to play against the Tigers in this series this week. But yeah, just glad that for the sake of his well-being, that was not anything more serious than it ended up being.
Yeah, crazy events there. I remember I just turned on the TV and I just kind of saw the aftermath of it. I was like, whoa, like you don't ever see this in baseball. It's usually a football thing where a guy gets carted off, and so it was kind of weird to see, but good to see that he's okay, and hopefully he recovers soon. So
most definitely. Well, that's going to do it for the Roundtable segment here on MLB drama, the Knights of the Round Table, and King Arthur himself. We'll reconvene at a later date. All right, with that, as we look to close this week's episode, any last-minute thought-provoking statements or shout-outs, JD?
Yeah, I guess just a general happy Easter to everybody, even though it was this past weekend. Hopefully everyone had a good holiday. Small shout outs to Alex Bregman and Shohei Ohtani. They both celebrated the birth of newborn babies, and they were on paternity leave this last week, so congrats to them. Also, congrats to the Detroit Pistons for breaking the playoffs losing streak yesterday. That was a fun game. So, yeah. And that's most of what I got.
Fair enough. Good stuff. This one's a thumbs down, but Jack Peterson is struggling like mightily. He's kind of a righty specialist. Like as a lefty, they kind of just play him against righties, but he is hitting .055 to start the year. With 55 at bats, he has 3 hits. Doesn't have a single home run or an RBI, and the Rangers continue to slot him in like the 5 or 6 spot. He has a -32 OPS plus, which 100 is the league average for those that don't know. So that, being anywhere below 100 is, you're below average, but a negative is kind of unheard of. So that's a thumbs down. Shout out to Walker Buehler, who absolutely dealt in the Boston Strong Monday matchup against the White Sox. Definitely happy with that pickup, and he'll pitch later this week against the Guardians, so definitely looking forward to that matchup. A shout out to Bryce Harper for the really cool gender reveal. That was pretty cool moment. Trey Turner handing him the pink bat there, or was it hold on a second. I want to
I
make
think
sure
it was
I'm getting
blue.
this right. It was the blue bat. So yeah, Trey Turner's got the pink bat and the blue bat in his hands. Hands Bryce Harper the blue bat to announce that he's having a son. That was a pretty cool way to do it. Shout out to Max Meyer of now bye week, who had 6 innings of no walks and 14 strikeouts. Becoming the second player to put up that stat line, with the first being my all-time favorite GOAT, Randy Johnson. And then finally, looking at our league's stash, Chase Burns was one of my picks in the draft. He's in the Cincinnati Reds organization, went to Tennessee, and was just promoted to Double-A Chattanooga. Go Lookouts, and just hoping that Chase Burns will continue to climb the ladder there.
Good stuff. Good stuff. A lot of good pitching there.
Yeah,
All right.
some definite like pipeline guys. The stash is getting interesting. It's been fun to track. So
yeah, Nick Kurtz just got called up too, so that's a big one for Joe. See what he does there. But more to come, I'm sure. Beauty. Well, that's gonna do it for us this week, everybody. Thanks so much, and be sure to tune in next week to our episode number 7, where I will take a deep dive into the cosmos with another round of Hawking Stat of the Week. But in the meantime, thank you to everyone for tuning in again, and never stop chasing your little big league dreams.